Lastly, sir, how do you see the response, the global response? Leave alone that you're from the Indian Air Force, but as a professional, as a professional Air Force veteran who will probably in the due course, Sage, you will be interacting with many other people from around the world. आप seminars करते हो, ये करते हो, वो करते हो. So there's always the backdoor discussions that happen, Air Force to Air Force. Yeah, what do you guys do? That is there. So what do you think will be the Air Force reactions of the world when they see what we've done? There are two reasons why I'm asking this, and one is the power and capability of
frankly,
projection. One is that, sir, and the second point is about basically bringing something down. Everybody used to say air power is not a war-winning weapon. It has to be a combination. And I still believe that it has to be a combination. But here is an example where air power has actually brought about an event change in a probably in an operational scenario. So how would you kind of see this, and how would the world see this going forward?
Okay. Two important points. I think you've two questions in the questions you asked. Two important points, Anuj. One is very interestingly, and I'm glad you asked this question, because now this question is a question of air power concepts, how other air forces look at Indian Air Force professionally. And second question, I think what you asked about is that on whether air power truly is war-winning entity by itself, or what is it? There are questions on that. So I'll answer both these questions separately. Indian Air Force's professional capability, we were the ones who underestimated ourselves, like I think most Indians do. We underestimate our own capabilities. But the real fact of it is that every time our officers went abroad for any courses abroad, and earlier days there were not very many courses. Okay, every time we send our officers abroad, they invariably did brilliantly. They topped the course, broke records, phenomenally. Because we've seen one thing: Indians have a fantastic ability to work hard, and we understand another thing important we must bear in mind is that we've always had problems of adequate wherewithal. We were always short of adequate wherewithal. So we were always making do. We mastered the art of doing the best we can always with whatever little we have. It's a national mentality. You see our family structures the way they are. It's incredible. So that is a very strong aspect. So till we started going abroad in larger numbers for international exercises, or till other air forces started coming, COPE India, which occurred in Gwalior, was defining. The US Air Force came and went back having learned a tough lesson of having been bested by what they considered a third world air force those days. We were looked at a third world country. Fact of it is. So they were surprised. I have led a team to Red Flag in Ellis, in the real Red Flag, not the one in Alaska, which they do with allies. This is the main Red Flag where they only do it with their, simply put, near and dear ones. Yes, they opened it out to us because we were bringing the Sukhois, and that was an enormous thing for them. But what happened? Again, we underscored the same thing. We were limited in a lot of ways. It was a Russian platform. It didn't plug into the larger architecture and network which the US was flying. So we are always again tied with our hands behind. We didn't have full situational awareness of the fight. But we built it up with our mental agility. Enormous. So it's only when we started doing international exercises that the world got a taste of truly the Air Force's capability. We never made a hoo-ha about it, ever. We are this, we are that. You see, not a single, even now when we go for training for this exercises, unlike I'm saying here, there's a problem we have. We don't advertise what we do or project what we do well enough, as well as probably the Navy certainly and the Army does it. It's a fact of life. We are lousy at it. But you will find the focus is only on the meat of the matter. So we always took away the best of the exposure and our exposure to the world, adapted it to our platforms and weapons, fought them on equal terms, and at many occasions came out better. So that speaks volumes for our professional approach. So if anything IAF has in spades, it may be short of platforms, weapon systems, capabilities, capacities. What it had in spades is professional capability and an ethos which nurtures this independent, young aggressiveness and professionalism. So that has been the staying power. So for the first time, we have done something. See, the Western pedagogy, Western जो writing है, study of air power internationally is been West driven. You always had US Air War College or UK Rusi or French National Defense College University coming out with papers and theoretical aspects. Indian writers never found credence. Nobody even bothered to study Indo-Pak wars. 1971 is a masterpiece of a short, swift war. 14 days. Look at the scale, what was achieved, and we came out clean. That hasn't happened anywhere in the world, but the least studied war. So Air Force, we suffered the same. Now people have suddenly woken up and said, bloody hell. So now there will be greater interaction, I'm sure, air power professional interaction at a higher level. There will be greater credence built up into this whole. People will know more. We will learn more. There will be more research and into what we have done, more examination of what we have done, And my sincere hope is a greater. It is not about making Air Force number one, which is the second part of your question. It is about making Air Force a go-to force along with all other elements of national power. Go to it right in the beginning, see what it has to offer. What occurred here is contextual. We fought in the manner under the certain context, with certain restrictions, with certain defined aims and objectives. Every conflict will have a different game plan, different parameters. Air Force adapts to each and will fight differently in each. And this is the challenge in integrating air power, understanding and integrating air power. So this is something the other services have to understand so that they can leverage air power for their service aims. One, their service aims. Because see, at the end of the day, every service has its own core competency. Joints, हर चीज में joint नहीं होता. Army has its core competency, Navy has its core competency, Air Force has its core competency. Yet, there are also areas where these three come together for a joint application of force in the ratio of involvement which will be dictated by the circumstances of the conflict you are going to go in. Not by the size of a service. So that is what I'm saying. This is the difference thing we need to bring into our matrix, that we have to plan for future conflicts in war, each in its own context. So you need agility, flexibility of that. Other part you said, Air Force, it is a force which brings enormous amount of options in the response matrix of a nation in its defense. Point is, you look at it at a stage much later in your security assessment. Most security assessments are seen from land-centric perspectives of border, territorial. So you come to Air Force later. But today, where the warfare has reached your homes, it is no longer about an army or an Air Force keeping the enemy at the border. दुश्मन तो आ चुका है घर में. आप जाते हैं, सिक्योरिटी चेक होता है, आपका पूरा तलाशी लिया जाता है. आप मॉल जाइए, पिक्चर देखने जाइए, गार्डन में जाइए, ट्रेन पे चढ़िए. It's an accepted way of life. So the point is, the threat is already inside. So this is a different threat. So how we use air power, this is one example in Ops Sindoor. It is not the whole repertoire of the Air Force. So Air Force will certainly in some cases can make effects and changes, but in a different way, most certainly the army will make an effect and change depending on the constructs of that fight. That is the point I'm making. But the final line I will leave you with is that you cannot not bring Air Force on board on the table from the minute you have a situation in hand. How much you can use it, leverage it, that is situational. But don't discount it or bring it later when your options are now limited. That is the point.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. Very, very important point. So this has cleared a lot of things. Let me just say thank you so much for the time, and I hope this is not one of the last interactions. This is one of the beginning of the journey of us learning about the Indian Air Force. क्योंकि हमको सीखना पड़ेगा सर, हमको understand करना पड़ेगा. And as you said in the beginning, and I'm going to take your words with your permission, कि यार अभी गेम खत्म नहीं हुआ है. Operations are still on. We are still in a war type situation, which is a gray zone. And the sooner the country realizes it that we are fighting this war, and the better it is. And सबसे ज़्यादा मेरा तो my I mean humble regard and my appreciation for all the startups that are coming up in the country to support and to kind of play the next role in terms of the defense aviation. And kudos to everybody, including the Indian Air Force, for actually just depending on our own systems to put the game forward. We just need a lot more of that. And I know right now there's a hashtag trending. I'm going to say it very clearly. Hashtag fund the Kaveri. So we need money and we need this Atmanirbharta to become our motto and value. Sir, once again, thank you so much. A pleasure talking to you. Audience, I would really request your comments and your reactions to what Sir has said. Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Adi, and thank you to all the listeners of Dev Talks. And I'm sure, Adi, this was just the beginning and not the end of our interactions. Thank you very much.